I would like to emphasize that we do not expect this crisis to last very long. However, there may be some lingering effects. We have seen similar crises in the past, such as the Gulf War in 1990, the Asian financial crisis in 1997, the oil price shock of 2008. This crisis lasted much longer, and yet we were able to get through them. We are confident that we will be able to keep the inflation within our target range of 2 to 4% and maintain our growth path.
That was Finance Chief Carlos Dominguez assuring the President that the Philippines has enough tools in its arsenal to weather the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. He admits, however, that the Philippines will be collateral damage in the ongoing war. He expects economic setbacks.
Be that as it may, he is confident that the government can control inflation to settle within its target band of 2 to 4%, even in the thick of soaring prices of fuel. His fellow cabinet member, Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, also has a measured response to the crisis, already dousing calls for a state of economic emergency. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. A state of economic emergency would have enabled local governments to access funds which may help the transport sector as the price of oil continues to go up.
But that's not necessary at this stage, at least according to the Energy Department. Instead, they opted to double the funding for fuel subsidy. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to the big story.
Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi has finally spoken out about the brewing oil crisis and says a state of economic emergency is not needed at this point.
Even when you declare an economic emergency, what do you do during the economic emergency? Ganun pa rin eh.
He countered House Ways and Means Chair Joey Salceda, who's been pushing for President Duterte to declare a state of economic emergency in light of the war in Ukraine. Doing so will enable local government units to tap their calamity funds to provide relief to jeep and tricycle drivers, as well as farmers and fisherfolk. Calls to suspend excise taxes have also been growing, and both houses are in recess right now. Salceda insists President Duterte should call for a special session of Congress by March 15.
Halos lahat po ng forecast ng JP Morgan, ng mga stratas, ito po yung mga consensus. Baka umabot ng $185 yan. At ang presyo po ng diesel, baka umabot ng 136, yung gasolina 145 at yung kerosene 129.
There's also talk of amending the oil deregulation law, but it isn't expected to happen until a new administration comes in. For now, Cusi says they will instead double the fuel subsidy program known as Pantawid Pasada.
We have decided to increase it to double the amount to 5 billion. Ang first tranche will be released this month and the second tranche will be on April.
But transport groups says it's not enough. They'd filed petitions calling for a fare hike which Salceda supports.
Since 2018 pa, 9 pesos na tayo. Kailangan po ng shared sacrifice.
Asked whether he thinks local pump prices could hit 100 pesos a liter given the ongoing conflict, Cusi says it's possible.
The future of oil price is uncertain. For how long? This one we don't know. No? So panawagan ko, let's conserve and use energy efficiently.
Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
What's the likelihood that Congress will meet for a special session to suspend excise taxes on oil? That big question and more with Senate Energy Panel Chair Senator Winky Chalyan. Senator, welcome to the big story.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you for inviting me.
First, let's talk about that option, or at least that call. As you know, Congressman Salceda has been pushing very aggressively for a special session. What's your sense of the appetite for that in both houses of Congress?
Robbie, while I'm open to the suspension, it should be the last resort. Suspending the excise tax will reduce government collections by 90 billion pesos. And that's a lot of revenue taken out from our coffers. An immediate relief should be in the form of pantawid pasada, but it should be given now, Robbie, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month. And we should double the subsidy to our PUV drivers by it's being given at 2,000 per month per driver, which we double to at least 4,000 to 5,000 pesos per month per driver.
We spoke with some economists. I think Mr. Emmanuel Leco is one of the people we spoke to, and some economists are saying we can actually forgo the excise tax and identify unspent funds. Not to mention even efficiencies, but even with the unspent funds every year, he said that's more than enough to cover anything that we might lose with excise taxes.
I agree with that, Robbie. We still have the quick response funds of the president, where the president can use those quick response fund to give out subsidies. Doubling the pantawid pasada to 5 billion pesos is still within the range of those quick response funds. So in other words, we still have other funds that we can tap into so that we can respond quickly. What's important now, Robbie, is to respond quickly because the prices are going up as faster than we can respond. And that's the crux of the problem right now.
Responding quickly is one factor. The other factor that seems to be driving both sides of this debate is also how long any solutions or interventions are going to be. Some are proceeding from the assumption, as you've heard, na hindi naman siguro ito kasing tagal ng Gulf War. Some are saying, well, we really don't know. Where do you stand? What is your premise on this?
Nobody has a crystal ball, Robbie. We just have to plan for the worst. We have to remember that Russia supplies about 5 billion barrels of oil to the global markets. That's about 12% of the global supply that comes from Russia. So meaning taking away 12% or 5 billion barrels of oil from Russia definitely will push out other countries like us because European countries will be forced to tap into, let's say, the Middle East or to other sources. So in other words, we have to plan for the worst. And this is where we are right now. One of the things that I'm suggesting is to increase the minimum inventory of our petroleum companies from 30 days to 45 days. This will enable us to have enough buffer for 45 days in an event that Russia will be sanctioned, because there's now impending talks that the US and other European countries will not buy oil and gas from Russia.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Senator Winky Chalyan. Another cabinet secretary, this time Finance Chief Carlos Dominguez, has a calibrated response to the crisis. He does not expect the current oil crisis to last long, but he is stopping short of saying that we will come out of this unscathed. One News business editor Regina Lay with this report.
Amid growing calls to suspend fuel excise taxes, Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III is taking a measured approach. He told President Duterte at Monday night's cabinet briefing that he doesn't think the oil price issue brought about by the war in Ukraine will last long.
We do not expect this crisis to last very long. However, there may be some lingering effects. The Philippine economy will likely be collateral damage. It is as if we are hit by a ricocheting bullet.
And that's significant because President Duterte largely leaves economic decisions to him. He assured the president that the government will be able to keep inflation to within 2 to 4% this year. Dominguez also told the cabinet that the Philippines is well equipped to weather this crisis, given past experience.
We have seen similar crises in the past, such as the Gulf War in 1990, the Asian financial crisis in 1997, the oil price shock of 2008, and also the first Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2014. And we have weathered all of these crises very well.
Back in October, the Finance Department already shot down the idea of suspending excise taxes. At that time, the Philippines was already suffering several weeks of oil price hikes, but the Russian invasion hadn't happened yet. The DOF argued that we will lose more than 131 billion pesos in revenues if they suspend excise taxes. And that's money that was being used for healthcare and COVID-19 recovery measures. Because of the extra expenses from the pandemic, the Philippines recorded the largest ever budget deficit last year. And the bigger the deficit, the more the government has to borrow in order to fund programs. Regina Lay, We Are One News.
These are the other big stories tonight. 1 peso at most, that's the fare adjustment that the LTFRB is putting on the table based on the recent spike in the cost of crude. Some jeepney drivers now resort to overcharging. 3 new Comelec commissioners have been appointed by President Duterte, including former election lawyer of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and 3 other candidates. And who says servicing electric posts is a man's job? We give tribute to the hardworking line women of Meralco as we celebrate International Women's Day. These big stories after the break.
Ma'am Casio. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. With a fare rate hike still pending, some jeepney drivers are taking matters into their own hands by keeping the change of commuters.
For now, the LTFRB can only commit to a possible 1 peso increase in fare rates as it studies proposals for as much as a 6 peso hike. Shaila Francisco with the details.
Roberto wasn't able to fill up his gas tank ahead of the massive oil price hike due to limited budget.
4 ikot lang ang dinidiesel ko dahil wala pang papultang. Minsan wala lang nga inuuwi eh.
Wala na talaga?
Wala na. Boundary na lang, boundary ko susobra, 200.
This is why some drivers along Marcos Highway no longer return change if passengers pay more than the 9 peso minimum fare.
Pero hindi na rin binabalik yung... Hindi na po, di na rin sila humingi.
Whenever commuters in Antipolo pay 10 pesos for the fare, they observe that some jeepney drivers don't return the change. While others let it go, some demand for change.
Kung magkano lang sukli, okay lang din. Naiintindihan namin din sila. Hindi na lang kami nagre-reklamo.
Reklamo din talaga po ako sa driver pag sobra po.
Bakit?
Kasi dapat yun lang ang sinisingit.
The LTFRB is reminding PUV drivers that they may be fined up to 15,000 pesos for overcharging. Meanwhile, the agency has yet to decide on the petition of transport groups to hike the minimum fare by up to 6 pesos. In the LTFRB's computation, only around a peso could be added based on the recent changes in the prices of fuel. The decision for a 10 peso minimum fare is up for resolution, but the agency vows to continue assessing the situation.
We want to be very cautious here so that we'll be able to balance the interest of the driver to keep providing public transport in a sustainable manner while at the same time not having to unduly burden our commuters.
Another hearing on the proposed fare hike is scheduled for March 22. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
What will it take to approve a fare hike? That big question and more with LTFRB Executive Director Maria Christina Miscachon. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good afternoon, good evening, and Gretchen, to Robbie, and to all our viewers po. Good evening.
Ma'am, bago po natin pag-usapan yung actual fare hike, another question is, what other options do we have? What other factors can you actually play with or offer other than a fare hike to ease the burden on both the commuters as well as drivers and operators?
Thank you for that. No, as we have been saying po, to cushion the effect of the series of fuel price increases, meron po tayong fuel subsidy program in which we have a 2.5 billion budget for this year. And other than that, there is also a proposal from the economic cluster, no, to release another 5 billion in terms of fuel subsidy. Aside from that, there is also the service contracting program, which we are targeting to launch this month. And DOE is also closely coordinating and meeting with all players for discounted fuels ranging from 1 peso to 4 pesos. These are all what we have been saying as basket of solutions for our drivers and operators who are being affected by the series of oil price increases.
Okay, so let's get to that basket of solutions and how it impacts the fares exactly. Some groups are asking for as much as 6 pesos fare increase. The LTFRB has expressed, we're looking at 1 peso. Malaki pa po yung gap. How do we bridge that gap? And how does that basket of solutions actually help to bridge that gap?
Earlier, we had the hearing on their petition for fare hike, and the 1 peso provisional increase is for resolution of the board. The board really has to have what we are saying as balancing of interest. On the one hand, there is the interest of the operators and drivers. However, there are also baskets of solutions being offered by the national government which were not present during the 2018 po na 10 pesos po yung kanilang fare increase noon po ng 2018. Ngayon po, we have yung sinasabi natin, fuel subsidy, service contracting, discounts po, no? On the one hand po, yung the commuters po will really be burdened. Alam po natin yan. No, the burden will be passed on to the commuters, and of course there will be an expected domino effect on the price of goods and services. So in resolving this petitions for fare hikes, we have to carefully scrutinize all aspects, and especially on the inflationary impact on our economy. That's why we are consulting also with NEDA particularly on the impact of these 6 pesos and 5. One petitioner is asking for 5 pesos and another petitioner is asking for 6 pesos. So we are consulting with the NEDA on the inflationary impact of these petitions. Even the 1 peso provisional increase, we are also consulting with them.
Okay, salamat po, Director Chalyan. That was LTFRB Executive Director Maria Christina Chalyan. With all prices continuing to rise, motorists are looking for better alternatives. Gretch, what mode of transport are we talking about here?
Well, the obvious answer, bicycles. More people have opted to ride bicycles to get to work. However, road safety continues to be a main concern. Laila Panghilinan with the story.
Hobby shop owner Jerome Supan has been biking more than 25 kilometers from Novaliches, Quezon City to get to his work in Makati. However, with a downgrade to Alert Level 1, Jerome noticed more vehicles out in the streets, which makes his routine more challenging.
Kung before, nakukuha ko siya ng 1 hour from sa amin hanggang Makati. Ngayon, naabot na ng 1 hour and 30 minutes.
More bikers are expected to ply EDSA in the coming days because of the increase of petroleum products. But the question is, how safe as a mode of alternate transportation is biking to work using EDSA?
The MMDA says biking in EDSA is safe as long as they use the bike lane and use safety gears like helmets. However, some of them compromise their safety, improvising on helmets just to save some money.
Inuna pa natin pangkain kaysa bumili tayo ng gamit para sa pangulo.
Marami po kasing nagsasabi na pwede po yung helmet ng pang-construction sa EDSA.
But some got lucky today after a group of Filipino-Chinese volunteers gave away helmets for free along EDSA.
500 pesos ang isang helmet.
So malaking bagay yon sa pang-araw-araw na gastusin, no, ng isang ordinary workers.
Aside from helmets, MMDA Traffic Chief Bong Nebrija reminds bikers to invest on other safety gear.
Sapatos, helmet, kung may gloves ka sana, ilaw, no? Ito yung mga bagay na kailangan para kung inabutan ka ng gabi. Reflectorized vest.
For those biking during the night, the MMDA assured cyclists that the bike lanes are visible. However, for some bikers like Jerome, there is still room for improvement.
Sana yung ibang areas naman, ma-repaint na yung bike lane natin kasi since nung unang siguro yung iba hindi na gumagana yung mga lights natin sa line.
The MMDA vows to improve these bike lanes for the safety of cyclists. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan, we are One News.
Time for another quick break. More of the big stories when we return.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. President Rodrigo Duterte has appointed 3 new Comelec commissioners and has named Saidamin Pangarungan as the ad interim chairman.
The list of new commissioners include the former lawyer of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., George Garcia. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to this story.
The Commission on Elections is once again complete after President Duterte appointed a new Comelec chairman and 2 new Comelec commissioners. But one of the appointees is raising eyebrows for possible conflict of interest. Pamantasang ng lungsod ng Maynila Law Dean George Garcia has served as election lawyer for at least 4 of the 2022 presidential candidates, including Ping Lacson, Manny Pacquiao, Isko Moreno, and more recently he lawyered for Bongbong Marcos in the electoral protest filed by Marcos against VP Leni Robredo.
Nag-serve ako to the best interest sa aking mga clients, but at the same time, that is to me, public service at the highest level.
Poll watchdog Contradaya is asking the incoming commissioners to prove their credibility, especially Garcia, since several disqualification cases against Marcos are still pending with the commission. Garcia will inhibit himself from the cases and petitions involving past clients to put worries at bay.
I have to file the necessary motion to withdraw in all the cases that I am handling sa Comelec and such other in the Supreme Court, in other courts, pati other electoral tribunals.
Also appointed by the President, Comelec Chairman Saidaman Balt Pangurangan and Aimee Torrefranca Neri. Parangunan graduated from the same school as Duterte, San Beda University, while Neri has been a repeated appointee by the President in various agencies. Comelec spokesperson James Jimenez said the incoming commissioners will be assigned to the divisions of their liking in the next NBank session.
We have to give each individual commissioner the opportunity to prove themselves impartial and neutral in the exercise of their duties.
At the same time, the Supreme Court has ordered the Comelec to stop its controversial Oplan Baklas. The court ordered the Comelec to comment on the petition within 10 days. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
Time and time again, women have proven that they are just as, or if not, in fact, more skilled, talented, and stronger than men.
In celebration of National or International Women's Day, I got to meet two women who have broken barriers and have climbed the highest post, literally here in the country. Let's get to know more about these women in my report. Already up at 6 in the morning in full gear with their hard hats and heavy uniforms, Cha and Pearl are up for the tough task of being a line crew for Meralco. They are just two of the only 6 line women out of 1,000 linemen in the Philippines.
Pioneer po kasi kami, kaya parang yung proud mo sa sarili mo na ikaw yung kauna-unahang line women sa buong Southeast Asia.
Challenge ko po yung sarili ko talaga na kaya ko ba to? Yun, nakaya ko, tinuloy ko na.
The two have been doing this for 8 years, and throughout, they have proven that they can take on the same job as men, if not even exceed what their male counterparts can do.
Maraming customer na na galit, nandyan yung, syempre mainit nga po, nandun siguro yung advantage namin na babae kami, kapag kami yung kumausap sa kanila, yung parang humihinahon yung nila, humihinahon po sila.
But it was no walk in the park. They had to go through a 6-month rigorous training program. After all, Meralco says there's no special treatment for line women.
Pag umaga, inisip ko, hala, paano ko na naman sisimulan yung araw ko? Yung jogging pa lang, hinihingal na ako, pero kinakaya po.
Yung training naman sa mga female line crew, pareho lang din kung paano tinitrain yung mga male line crew. So ang expectation din sa output ng trabaho nila, pantay lang.
Though the job may be risky, Pearl and Chat say that being a line woman has provided them and their families with a stable livelihood.
Kahit babae yan, kaya niyang gawin yung mga nagagawa din ng lalaki. Tsaka hindi siya natatakot na umakit kahit na anong training nila mataas, hindi siya natatakot.
Now, this may be a difficult and dangerous job, but our line women have definitely proven that women can also thrive in this profession. With the success of the program, from 22%, they're now targeting a 40% female workforce. Apart from adding 15 more line women, a scholarship for female technicians is also in the works as Meralco partners with Don Bosco Makati and the One Meralco Foundation.
Ang pagkakaroon ng isang diversified workplace, ibig sabihin mas marami tayong makukuhang ideas, mas marami tayong makukuhang suggestions sa ating mga employees.
As we celebrate International Women's Day, Cha and Pearl have a bit of advice for women wanting to break the bias in their fields.
Subukan nila. Pero palagi ko kaya naman with proper training po eh.
Kung kaya namin, kaya din po nila. Basta nasa puso po nila na gusto nila yung ginagawa nila. Wala naman pong mahirap pag gugustuhin.
Gretchen Ho, we are One News. Grabe, nakaka-proud sila sobra. Ang hirap ng trabaho nila at parang sundalo din ng training nila.
Yeah, and wonderful story and happy International Women's Day to you and to everybody here.
That's right. You know, they are, examples of how things have improved for women everywhere. But as we can see, they're just 6 out of 1,000. There's more work to be done. And speaking of that, we've actually, in support of diversity and sustainability, we've changed our floor director to a woman. Hi, Thea. Welcome to the family.
And ito ang fun fact ko for International Women's Day.
Ano?
In my entire career, nag-dyaryo ako, nag-NGO ako, moved to Bangkok, moved back here to TV5. Lahat ng direct boss ko, babae.
Ay, okay yun.
Pag uwi ko, babae pa rin ang boss ko.
Oo nga naman. A salute to all the bosses, the wives, the mothers, and to all the women out there. This is our day. And let's continue promoting the welfare and pulling other women up wherever we may be as we continue to break the bias. At sabi nga nila, di ba? Hindi babae lang, babae ako. That wraps up today's Big Story Catch. See you tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.